The first time I saw her, I thought the world had gone quiet just to make room for the sound of her laugh. It's been 6 months since that day, and right now, the only sound is the soft exhalation of rain against the window pane. We're standing in her kitchen, a space of warm wood and lingering scent of coffee and her perfume, something like rain-soaked violets. The party is a dull murmur in the living room, a world away. We are an island of two. Elara is 46. I am 27. She once told me that numbers are just the rings on a tree, proof of weathering. Right now, she looks weathered, beautifully so. A fine strand of silver has escaped the dark twist of her hair, curving against her temple. Her eyes, the color of aged whiskey, hold a tiredness that has nothing to do with the hour. "You shouldn't stare like that, Leo," she says, her voice a low hum that vibrates in the space between us. She doesn't look at me, instead focusing on pouring a glass of water. Her hands are elegant, capable, but I see the faint tremor in her fingers as she sets the carafe down. Like what? Like you're trying to memorize something you're about to lose. The air leaves my lungs. She has always been able to do that. Slice through the pleasantries and touch the raw nerve underneath. We said it was over 3 weeks ago. A mutual, quiet agreement. Too complicated, too much, not enough. The words were ash in my mouth. We haven't spoken since. Until tonight. "I'm not the one who's lost," I say, the words coming out softer than I intended. Her eyes flick to mine, then away. A lifetime of restraint is held in that single gesture. The space between us feels charged, a magnetic field I have to consciously resist stepping into. I can feel the residual warmth from her arm, mere inches from mine. I remember the exact weight of her hand in mine, the way her thumb would trace absent circles on my palm. She finally turns, leaning back against the counter, crossing her arms. It's a defensive posture, one I know well. "You look good. Are you sleeping?" No, the honesty is a reflex with her, a dangerous one. "Are you?" A ghost of a smile touches her lips. "What do you think?" I take a half-step closer. The scent of her perfume intensifies, wrapping around me. I can see the delicate lines at the corners of her eyes, the pulse beating a quiet rhythm at the base of her throat. This is the closest I've been to her since we ended it, since we lied to each other. "I think you're a terrible liar, Elara." Her gaze drops to my mouth, just for a heartbeat, long enough to send a jolt through me. The air is thick with everything we aren't saying. "I miss you. I was wrong. This is a mistake." My hand twitches at my side, wanting to bridge the gap, to feel if her skin is still as soft as I remember. She uncrosses her arms, her hand falling to her side, brushing against the fabric of my trousers. It's an accident. It has to be. But neither of us moves. The touch is a brand, a spark on dry tinder. Her breath hitches, a tiny, fractured sound swallowed by the rain. And then the kitchen door swings open, flooding our quiet, impossible world with light and noise. "There you are. Elara. We need you to settle a debate about." The voice fades into a meaningless buzz. Elara's eyes are wide, locked on mine, filled with a panic that mirrors my own. The spell is broken, but the charge remains, hanging in the air like a promise, or a threat. The party eventually died, and the guests bled away with mumbled thanks and coats pulled tight against the rain. Now it's just the two of us in the aftermath. I'm stacking dishes. She's wiping down counters. Our movement's a silent, familiar dance. We've done this a dozen times before in the before. "Mark hated parties," she says, her back to me. The name of her ex-husband lands in the quiet room like a stone. He said they were a performance. He was probably right. I set a plate down too carefully, the clink of porcelain on granite too loud. "Do you miss it? The performance?" She pauses, the cloth stilling on the counter. "I miss knowing the script." Her vulnerability is a rare, fleeting thing, offered and then withdrawn. "You're lucky. At your age, you're still writing yours. No one expects anything. I expect something from myself, I want to say. With you. But the words feel too young, too earnest. That's the heart of it, isn't it? The gap between us isn't just years. It's a chasm of different scripts. Her friends see a boy with a fleeting crush. Mine see a midlife crisis he can't afford. We are each other's beautiful, complicated secret. I move to take the cloth from her, my fingers brushing against hers. We both freeze. Her skin is cool, damp from the cloth, but the point of contact feels like a brand. I don't pull away, neither does she. Her breath catches. A soft, sharp intake I feel more than hear. Your script is full of ellipses, Elara. I murmur, my voice low. You always trail off right when it gets interesting. Her eyes, when they meet mine, are deep and unguarded. It's dangerous when it gets interesting. I can feel the warmth of her body, so close to mine. The air hums with the refrigerator's drone and the frantic beat of my own heart. I can see the fine texture of her lipstick, slightly smudged from the wine. I notice the way a muscle in her jaw tightens, a tiny battle between leaning in and pulling away. She is the one who breaks, her hand slipping from under mine. But she doesn't step back. Instead, her fingers rise, hovering for a heart-stopping moment near my cheek before she gently tucks the stray strand of silver hair behind her ear. The gesture is so intimate, so domestic. It steals the air from my lungs. You should go, Leo, she whispers, but her body is a contradiction, angled toward me, her gaze dropping to my mouth. The space between us is no longer empty. It is filled with the ghost of every touch we've ever shared and the electric promise of every one we're denying ourselves. We are a question hanging in the air, and for the first time since we ended it, the answer doesn't feel like no. The sound of a key turning in the front door lock was like a gunshot. We sprang apart. The air, charged with our unspoken confession, shattered into 1,000 brittle pieces. Elara's hand flew to her throat, her eyes wide with a panic I felt echoing in my own racing heart. El? You still up? Her friend, Sarah, called from the hallway. I left my bloody phone charger. Elara's gaze locked with mine. In that split second, I saw it all, the shame, the fear, the frantic need to compose a mask. In the kitchen, she called back, her voice impressively steady, though a faint tremor ran through her as she turned to busily wipe a spotless counter. Sarah bustled in, a whirlwind of rain-damp coat and chatter. God, what a night! You two are saints for cleaning up. Her eyes flicked between us, a little too perceptively. The space between Elara and me felt vast and yet obscenely small. Leo was just helping me finish up, Elara said, not looking at me. Right? Well, don't let me keep you, Sarah said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes as she unplugged her charger from the wall. You look tired. Don't stay up too late with the cleaning. The pause was a verdict. With him, the words hung unspoken, heavy with judgment. Sarah gave a little wave and was gone, the front door clicking shut with a finality that felt like an ending. The silence she left behind was thick and suffocating. Elara leaned heavily on the counter, her head bowed. See, she whispered, the word choked. This is what it is. The whispers, the looks. I'm old enough to be your... I can't do this, Leo. I can't be the subject of their gossip. I don't care what they think, I said, stepping closer, my voice low and fierce. You should, she cried, turning to face me, her eyes glittering with unshed tears. Because I have to live in this world. I have to see them at the grocery store. I have to face myself in the mirror and wonder what the hell I'm doing. And what are we doing, Elara? I was right in front of her now, close enough to feel the heat coming off her skin, to see the pulse fluttering wildly in her neck. She looked up at me, her resistance crumbling. Her breath hitched. My hand came up, my thumb brushing away a single traitorous tear that escaped down her cheek. The touch was electric. Her eyes fluttered closed. It was a confession, a surrender. My other hand found her waist, pulling her the last remaining inch until our bodies were aligned, separated only by the thin, maddening barrier of our clothes. I could feel the frantic beat of her heart against my chest. Her hands came up, not to push me away, but to clutch at the fabric of my shirt, anchoring herself. Her lips were inches from mine. Her breath, warm and sweet, brushed my skin. We didn't kiss. We just stood there, in the wreckage of our good intentions, breathing each other in, closer than we'd ever been and more terrified than we'd ever been. The space between our lips was a universe and a single, breathless moment. I could feel the tremor that ran through her, a fine, constant vibration against my chest. Her fingers tightened their grip on my shirt, knuckles white, as if I were the only solid thing in a tilting world. "This is," she began, her voice a ragged whisper, but she had no words for what this was. Neither did I. It was a beautiful, terrible collision of everything we'd been denying. "This is the only thing that's felt real in months." I finished for her, my voice rough, my forehead resting against hers. Her eyes were squeezed shut, as if she could block out the reality of my body against hers. The scent of her, violets and salt, was all I could breathe. My hand moved from her waist, up the delicate ladder of her spine, until my fingers were tangled in the dark silk of her hair. I felt her shudder at the contact. I gently coaxed her head back, just enough so she had to look at me. Her eyes were wide, dark pools of fear and a longing so deep it mirrored my own. "Tell me to stop," I murmured, my thumb tracing the arch of her cheekbone. "Tell me to leave and I will. I'll walk out that door and you'll never see me again." It was a gamble, the final card laid on the table. Her breath caught. A war raged behind her eyes. I could see the arguments, the years of propriety, the ghost of her former life, all battling against the raw, simple truth of this. Her lips parted, to speak the words that would end us, to tell me to go. But no sound came out. Instead, a single, desperate sound escaped her throat, a half-sob, half-sigh of surrender. Her body went pliant against mine, all the fight draining out of her in one long, slow exhalation. Her hands released my shirt, sliding up to frame my face. Her touch was cool and trembling, but it was the most certain I had ever felt. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, and this time, she didn't look away. The no that had lived in the set of her shoulders for weeks finally crumbled into dust. The world narrowed to the space between us. The rain outside, the hum of the appliances, the weight of our pasts. It all faded into a distant hum. There was only her breath mingling with mine, the frantic beat of her heart under my palm, and the silent, undeniable pull. I leaned in, slowly, giving her every last chance to turn away. She didn't. Her eyes fluttered closed. Our lips were a hair's breadth apart. I could feel the phantom shape of them, the promise of their warmth. And then the sharp, invasive buzz of my phone, vibrating against the granite countertop, shattered the silence like a physical blow. The spell didn't just break. It exploded. We jerked apart as if scalded. The air, once charged with promise, was now thick with the jarring, relentless buzz of the phone. Elara took 2 stumbling steps back, her hand flying to her lips as if she could still feel the ghost of the kiss that hadn't happened. Her eyes were wide, not with desire anymore, but with a kind of horrified clarity. I wanted to smash the phone, to hurl it against the wall and reclaim the moment. But the damage was done. The real world had intruded, and with it all the complications we'd been ignoring. "Aren't you going to get that?" she asked, her voice thin and strained. It might be important. It was my mother's ringtone, a scheduled, weekly check-in I'd forgotten. The mundane normality of it was a brutal contrast to what we'd almost done. I silenced it, the action feeling like a betrayal of both women. "It's no one," I said, but the lie was ash in my mouth. "It's someone," she corrected softly, wrapping her arms around herself. "It's your life, Leo. A life I don't really fit into, do I?" She gave a hollow laugh. "My son is only a few years younger than you. Did you know that?" The statement landed like a physical blow. She had never said that before. It was the one line she had never drawn between us, until now. I felt the chasm open up, raw and undeniable. "What does that have to do with anything?" I protested, my voice rising with a desperation I hated. "It has everything to do with it," she cried, her composure finally cracking. "When your mother calls, what do you tell her?" That you're spending your evening with a woman her age? That you're about to? She couldn't finish. She turned away, her shoulders trembling. I moved toward her, my hand outstretched to touch her back, to offer some anchor in this sudden storm. Don't, she whispered, her voice breaking. But as I froze, my hand hovering just inches from her, she didn't move away. She leaned back, almost imperceptibly, until the heat of her body bled through the space between my palm and her spine. It was a silent scream of contradiction, a plea to stop, and an invitation to close the gap. We stood like that for a long moment, trapped in the silence. Her body was a bowstring pulled taut, trembling with the effort of holding itself together. My own hand shook with the need to touch her, to prove that the connection we felt was stronger than the facts she was listing. Finally, she spoke, the words so quiet I had to lean in to hear them, my breath stirring the hair at her nape. I'm terrified, she confessed, a raw, honest admission that changed everything. I'm terrified of how much I want you to ignore me. It wasn't a no. It was a confession of a war she was losing. And in that moment the decision was made. The inevitable was upon us. Her confession hung in the air, the most honest thing either of us had said in weeks. I'm terrified of how much I want you to ignore me. It was the permission I hadn't dared to hope for, wrapped in a plea for mercy. I closed the final, agonizing inch. My hand settled on her back, palm flat against the tense curve of her spine. She jolted at the contact, a sharp intake of breath, then melted backward into me, her body going soft and pliant against my chest. A broken sound escaped her, half relief, half despair. I turned her slowly, giving her every chance to pull away to rebuild the wall. She didn't. She let me turn her until we were face to face, her head tilted back, her eyes searching mine in the dim light. They were filled with tears she wouldn't let fall. I'm not ignoring you, I whispered, my voice rough. My other hand came up to cradle her jaw, my thumb stroking the high arch of her cheekbone. I'm finally listening. This was the choice. Not a dramatic, shouted declaration, but a quiet, seismic shift in the space between our bodies. We were past the point of words. The arguments were ash. The fears were just ghosts in the room. All that was left was the palpable, aching truth of our want. She brought her hands up, not to push me away, but to clutch at my shoulders, her fingers digging into the fabric as if I were the only thing keeping her from being swept away. Her gaze dropped to my mouth, and this time, there was no hesitation, no interruption. Leo, she breathed, and it was a surrender, a confession, and a prayer all in one. I bent my head. The first brush of my lips against hers was featherlight, a question. She went utterly still. Then, a tremor racked her frame, and her lips parted on a sigh, answering me. The kiss deepened, not with frantic passion, but with a slow, devastating certainty. It was not a discovery, but a homecoming, a memory of 100 kisses we'd never shared, finally made real. It tasted of salt and wine and the profound relief of letting go. Her hands slid from my shoulders to tangle in my hair, pulling me closer, anchoring me to her. The world, with all its judgments and complications, ceased to exist. There was only the softness of her mouth, the warm weight of her in my arms, and the silent, thunderous understanding passing between us. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathless, foreheads resting together, eyes still closed, sharing the same air. We didn't speak. There were no words for this, no promises to make it neat or safe. It was messy and raw and terrifyingly real. But we understood. The fight was over. The line had been crossed. There was no going back. We didn't end up in some grand cinematic embrace. We simply settled. We moved to the living room sofa, the same one where, hours before, we had been islands in a sea of party guests. Now the distance was gone. She curled into my side, her head resting in the hollow of my shoulder, her legs tucked up. My arm was around her, my fingers slowly tracing idle patterns on her sleeve. The rain had softened to a gentle whisper against the window. The only light came from a single lamp, casting the room in a warm, golden glow. My son is at university, she said into the quiet, her voice soft but clear. It wasn't a barrier anymore. It was just a fact, a piece of the life she was offering me. He thinks I'm boring. I smiled, my lips brushing against her hair. He's wrong. She tilted her head back to look at me, her eyes searching my face. The fear was still there, a faint shadow, but it was no longer in control. People will talk. Let them, I said, and this time, the words held no youthful bravado, only a simple, steady certainty. I'm not in love with them. The word hung in the air between us. Love. We hadn't said it before. Not like this, in the calm after the storm. Her breath hitched, but she didn't look away. Instead, she brought a hand up, her fingers gently tracing the line of my jaw. It's not going to be easy, she whispered. I don't want easy, I replied, catching her hand and lacing my fingers through hers. I brought her knuckles to my lips, pressing a soft, lingering kiss there. I just want you. A slow, real smile finally touched her lips, smoothing away the last of the tension. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. She shifted, turning more fully into me, and leaned up to press a soft, deliberate kiss to my forehead. It was a gesture of such profound tenderness and acceptance that it stole my breath. She settled back against my shoulder with a contented sigh, our intertwined hands resting on my chest. We didn't need to say anything else. The silence was no longer awkward or charged. It was comfortable, a shared space we had finally carved out for ourselves. The doubts hadn't vanished, but they had been put in their place, overshadowed by the simple, solid reality of holding one another. The world outside, with all its complications, could wait. For now, in the quiet warmth of the lamplight, we were exactly where we were meant to be. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?